How are you guys? Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful, wonderful third episode of Eccentric Conversation. I'm joined by Martin Tinfeldt.
Tinneveldt, yeah.
Tinneveldt. Sorry, I was. I knew that it was. I was gonna like have a brain fart when I was supposed to say it, but thank you so much for joining me and agreeing to have this conversation. I'm so stoked for what we're gonna talk about. You do quite a few things, so I'd like maybe for you to tell us what you do and interest us about the your world and the things that you interact with and the information that you interact with.
Yeah, hi. It's a privilege to be here. When I first saw your first app, I was like, no, I gotta join here. I gotta come support you.
Thank you.
And I'm very honored to be hosted by you. So thanks for making this happen.
Thank you.
I'm passionate about nature, and so I became a natural scientist, and currently I'm practicing as a professional natural scientist in the fields of wetlands, hydropodology, where hydropodology is the interaction between soil and water. So I'm a specialist in those two fields as well. And yeah, I've never had a boss before, so my journey at the moment is to actually have a boss,
That's cool.
to become a citizen. I was very anti-citizenry before. In school, you at some stage everybody realizes this world's kind of different.
Yeah.
And what the world wants to do is wants to force everybody into one little pot and make them all the same.
Yeah.
And I decided for myself that I'm individual, and as such, I shall remain an individual, going into life, and just taking every day by day. And I kind of lost a little bit of enthusiasm about 3 years ago, and then I decided, no, life's got to change a bit. I had everything I ever wanted, and I was not happy.
Yeah.
Makes me feel ungrateful. Thinking back to that, and because now having chosen to start all over again from scratch, it's kind of like you pack up the Monopoly game and you start over again.
Yeah.
Right. You deal the cards and. It's new partners, it's new rules, it's new everything, a new city. I've decided to stay in South Africa, and I decided to move to Durban, where we are now, and it's a city which I've never lived in before, and it's hot, it's humid,
Yeah.
very nice people, and it's. I get to meet so many new people, and I think that is the beautiful thing. I'm also very honored to be in the kingdom of the Zulu.
Yeah.
So I also enjoy studying people.
That's cool.
So psychologically, and then anthropologically, and just in general, the geography of the world, politics, geopolitics, history, what are lies, what are theories, science. I've got many, many hobbies which are not hobbies. They just come natural to me.
Yeah.
I've also got concentration issues, so I do 10 million things at once. And also I've also decided to take life a bit more easy.
Yeah.
Not to put myself at risk so much. So yeah, that's my life for now.
Yeah. That's cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, even before this, we've been talking. I think we were around the South Coast in education and like where I got my education that I went to an Indian school. But in high school, I went to a black school, and the things that I saw, like I didn't know that children could smoke cigarettes in school until I went to that school, and I saw that happening, and that behavior was also linked to the children that we perceived as cool. They were also always at the front of how you dress to look cool in school and stuff like that. And so that whole conversation was going to this predictor of what I see now as where that life led for a lot of people, a lot of my peers that I grew up with. You know, they have a low end job if they have one, or they just sit around a shop somewhere, and it feels like, how do you not see that problem in the community? And why is it feels like a design, and and then there's also just knowing the chance of me thinking the way I think, but having been in those circumstances. It's and then yeah, the predictor of that trajectory of life is not great, you know. And yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I'm privileged to be able to live the life I live now and have that common understanding of what people in certain areas might be experiencing, especially the ones that I've been around. And the reason I say that, like I was telling you this idea about wanting to create curriculums for school and for schools and ways of learning, because I just think to apply the same way of learning in a school, in a location, and the school, the same one that you'd use in like a suburban area like this one, it's like the social issues and economic issues and, you know, level of stresses, you can't fit those people in one mold and have the same structure of learning. It's just not going to be conducive to great learning. And I think all schools should probably have like some psychology person who's going to be a school counselor and, you know, figure out what's the best direction for the school specifically, you know, and to combat some issues that schools have based on which area they're in, you know. But it's sad that we don't have that in South Africa. We don't have, it's not common, at least, to, especially in schools and locations, stuff like that. There's not a school counselor who knows the issues that children go through and finds
That's
things
very interesting because I stay opposite primary remedial school.
Yeah.
And I walked in the other day, which I shouldn't have been allowed to, you know.
Yeah.
And I spoke to the first person there, was the principal by chance. And I said to him, listen, this child's been screaming for like 2 weeks now, banging on the door. And he says to me, yeah, what can I do? You know, the parents lock it up the whole time. So this child obviously doesn't come from, I stay in quite an upmarket place in Durban.
Yeah.
So this child doesn't come from here. It's a state-run school. And then the principal tried to calm me down by saying like, okay, no, it's cool. Look, the school nurse is going. I'm like, the school nurse, where's your psychological specialist? You know? I'm coming from a private school background. So I was like, you know, if I had to speak to someone, I went to the school shrink, you know, fully qualified and all the rest of it. You know,
where's that for this environment?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that the school shrink helped me anything because I never visited them. I was too proud of it. But you get what I'm saying. And then coming back to the point of what you said in the beginning about, you know, seeing your peers or the people you grew up with in school, seeing them now sitting in front of a tuck shop or something, or a shebeen, you know, hopeless. So there was research done in Canada with skate parks.
Yeah.
And then why do... It also joins in with the story about that you said about, you know, you didn't know that children were allowed to smoke or could smoke. I think it's much more that you didn't know that they were allowed to smoke.
Yeah.
You still had respect. And that's something that is taught in the family, you know, discipline. You know, how to respect your parents and how not to respect the authority that stands before you. Because at a child's age, you don't actually recognize yourself. At the age of 24, you only start creating critical thought, you know, consequential thought for yourself. So with the skate park story is that the sound of the bearings of the wheels, you know, as they, you know, that sound of skateboards, it calms people down. And generally, you see children who come from stressed home environments, either there's spousal abuse or childhood abuse or alcoholism or drug abuse or something like that, absenteeism from parents or minders. where children generally don't feel they are loved. They tend to hang around skate parks because of the sound of the bearings. But now, obviously, there's also a certain stigmatism associated, DC shoes, van shoes,
Yes.
fashion, M&M, the whole skater park look. There's a lot of things there that allow children to be confronted with, first, on the first place, a place where they feel comfortable,
Yeah.
an environment which is completely artificial skate park.
Yes.
But the bearings, the sound of the bearings make them feel calm. It calms them down. And then you get some smart kid coming in there trying to be cool. And the smart kid comes in and starts pushing drugs.
Yeah.
And he doesn't push, or she doesn't push drugs maybe consciously. It's much more a thing of, again, just coming from maybe a bit more affluent background, having older siblings, seeing the stuff lie around, trying to be cool, bringing the stuff into the environment. And next thing you know, like, the cool kids are doing drugs.
Yes.
And I'm part of the cool kids. And so that's a very sad aspect of that.
Yeah. Almost like the place that was supposed to be a safe space for them becomes poisoned by the drugs, essentially.
Yeah, well, you can take that further. It's like, or was that place constructed to attract a certain type of individual who is susceptible to manipulation and then eventually abduction? Like, this issue of grooming gangs in England is quite big at the moment, right? And I mean, that's not just England; it's all over the world.
Yeah.
If you look at here, at what happened in the Eastern Cape, where the economy, the rural economy, was completely destroyed through a drought, whether it was artificial or man-made, and man-made droughts. This doesn't mean that you just switch off the tap of the clouds, which you can do. Like, weather control is very
much a real thing.
It's a business, right? But you can create droughts by economic droughts. You can create social droughts, like what happened in northern Mozambique as well now, where private corporations came in and they started turning off the social benefits, like teachers and nurses. What happens to young people if they're without teachers and nurses, right? They start doing funny, and then you get some foreigners, if it's Indians, Chinese, or whoever, right? And there's some foul element within that to destabilize the community, the culture. They can then very quickly, and I'm not saying it's the individuals who do it, it's usually the corporates who do it. And there's a book that they follow to do this. It's very simple, how to destroy a rural community. And that's through drugs. And then the drugs come in, and once the drugs are in, then the abuse happens within the family, because then the theft of the sasa grants, which the grandmother absorbs, is gone. And then once that is gone, what's next? Because what the drug does, it masks the ability to apply intellectual, emotional quotient, not intelligence quotient, but emotional quotient. And if you have nothing, like in the Eastern Cape, some places are extremely rural, right? And there's no roads, right? There's no taxis coming through.
Yeah.
Man, what are you going to do? You can't plow the field because there's no rain.
Yeah.
There's no seeds. Like the whole GMO narrative that has happened. Now, you got all these NGOs coming into the rural areas supplying GMO seeds.
Yes.
By doing that, they take the seeds that have been forever been growing in those soils, with that climate, with those people tending, with those techniques, right?
Yes.
Those seeds are now gone because now GMO's there. But now the NGO falls away. COVID happens. The NGO falls away. No more seeds.
Yeah.
Like, the biggest thing in the Second World War for Germany was the installation of queues for people standing behind each other waiting for food to arrive. Because before that, everybody was self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody had a garden. And if they didn't have a garden, if they lived in a flat, for instance, they would have a little patch of grass or something, like a field somewhere next to railway tracks or something. And then they would go once a week there and they would tend to the garden and grow their own vegetables. Right? Now, that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Now, you saw before COVID, for instance, the variety of products in the shops was enormous. It was almost like you don't know what to choose.
Yeah.
You didn't even look at the top shelf, bottom shelf, because marketing goes eye level. So I'm taller, so I see different things. Shorter people would see different things down there. But in the average height, that's where the brands are, the big brands are.
Yeah.
Like, shopping centers, Pick and Pay, Checkers, stuff like that, they don't sell products. They sell shelf space. That's how they make their money. Per square centimeter. And you see those packers. They start pushing product out of the way. Yo, there's big trouble. Then I've seen packers punch each other because the one is pushing the product out of the other one.
Oh, yes. And do you think they pay for that premium spot?
Yeah, of course. That's premium price. That's retail space, right? You didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't think of it that way at all.
Yeah, that's literally space. You know, it's eye height, even like nose. You know, when you go to fresh produce and stuff like that. And next time you go shopping, have a look.
Yeah, and the kiddies sections, you find like an aisle that has nothing to do with toys, but just at the bottom there's like toys.
Or just before the cashiers, right?
Yeah.
You got the chocolates and the adult sweets on top and the children's sweets on the bottom.
In the bottom.
And then especially right there, if you come to the end and there's a hook, you know, that's generally when the parents pick up the children because the children are like,
yeah.
And then you see the children's sweets there.
Yo, that is such an interesting way of looking at it. It's just space, and the brands are the ones that put the product in. It's
or
like
the brands that they've got the money to pay, because now you got independent like mom and pop shops, right?
Yeah.
Which are mainly wiped out now with COVID because they couldn't sustain through that. They didn't have that financial buffer.
Yeah.
So before, when like, let's say you go and want to make a new lipstick, right? Yes. And you create a new lipstick, you register it with the patents and all that stuff, copyright your product. You do everything, take all the steps, cost you 75,000, you're cool, right?
Yeah.
Now you start producing, you got a bank loan, and you start selling. Awesome. So now you start stocking shelves, right? Let's say you live in Durban North, right, for this argument's sake. And you go to the Hyper, you go to the Checkers, you go to the Woolworths, and they all give you the shelf space, and you pay for it, right?
Yeah.
But now you can only get to the shopping center once, or to that shop maybe once a week because you're busy, right? Because most of the time you're going to other shops and stacking because you don't actually have money for a packer because you're starting out with your company.
Yeah.
So next week when you come back to restock your shelf, you see that the packer who's there every day, all day, hired by this big corporate company, has pushed all your product behind his product or her product, and your product is not even able to be seen. And you're like, hey, I paid for this, and they don't care. Yeah. Because as soon as you step out, they know you're not going to be back for a whole week.
Yes.
And the more products they pack, the more money they get. So then you start getting the carrot and stick situation, right? And the greed starts playing in, and then the respect for the next human being, the fellow human being, falls away, which is very sad.
Sure. And
so money's never nice.
No, it's never. There's something I thought about while I was in the shop. We're at Clicks, and you know, Pringles, they've gone through the roof price-wise. I think you pay like 80 Rand for a box now. I mean, that little cylindrical box that they have.
Cotton,
yeah. I remember when I was young, my mom got those for me, and it was 20 Rand, I think.
How much are they now?
80.
80?
They're 80 Rands, yes.
You know how much nappies are?
No.
Cheaper.
Cheaper. So I'm like, this is ridiculous. But there's this other company now that made a version of those chips as well. I forget what they called.
Let's not do branding.
Yeah, but
let's not give them credit.
Yeah, they've created that, and I remember just thinking, you know, that's amazing. Like, the generation that comes now may not remember Pringles if they do this well. You may think that this is the best brand that's around if it's pushed to you well. Pringles are quality. They're really good chips, and they've been in the business for a long time. Well, like in comparison to what we don't know, you know what I mean? Like they were the best that we've known because they're the only ones that existed.
They had excellent marketing, and they had good MSG in it, which faked our brain to believe what it was tasting.
That it was, and if another company does the same thing really well, it could share the market of Pringles, and that's really how you just do business.
So what business is McDonald's in?
Fast food?
No, real estate. They buy the property which is best suited for that location, or they buy the most expensive location, put a store there that pays for the rent.
Yes.
And then they put the Macadis in there, right?
Yes.
So what's that other burger joint that just started up recently?
Recently?
Yeah. Oof. Like maybe in the last 10 years or so.
Steers?
No. There's the other one where you can pack.
Is it South Africa? No.
Yeah. You can make your own burgers. What's it called? It's there next to Checkers at
Virginia.
Yeah. No, not the big checkers, the small checkers
Oh,
on
the
top
small.
there.
Oh, Rockamama's.
Rockamama's.
Yes.
So wherever you see a McDonald's around the corner, you'll see a Rockamama's. So that's basically saying like, okay, let's say you've got a shopping center, right? Like a shopping center is a long thing, and then you've got the main store on the back, and you've got all the small stops on the front,
Yes.
right? So marketing works like this. You got the big shop, which is the draw. You need to go buy your groceries, and on your way to your groceries, you might see some stalls or something that you want to buy on the
Yes.
side, right? So you got the cobbler there, you got the flower shop there, you got this main shop still buys and sells shoes and flowers and stuff like that, but this associated services are along the route. But you have to walk past them to get to where you want to,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so that's one thing. Then you get another thing is price loss leaders, right? You get it's Sunday and you go shopping and the wife sends you out to buy milk. So then they put the milk next to the cereal, or they put the bacon next to the eggs.
Yeah.
Because it's bacon and eggs, right? So then you buy the bacon you see it's on special. You're like, okay, I'm going to grab this bacon. You might even call wifey and say like, okay, wifey, I'm going to buy some bacon. She's like, okay, get some eggs.
Yeah.
So then the eggs benefit from the sale of the bacon.
Yeah.
Because this is now convention.
Yeah.
Because let me get back to the story of Germany, right? So when the Second World War ended, no one had any food,
Yeah.
right? Because it was war. It was terrible. It was nothing, like Gaza,
Yes.
gone. And so then people had to stand in queues, and that's when they can start introducing a different diet, because everybody got the same bread, everybody got the same fat or spread,
Yes.
and everybody got the same protein, everybody got the same lettuce. Whereas before, this family maybe came from this province and they had this preferences and this family tradition.
Yes.
Gone.
Yeah.
That opportunity to reinstill that pride of national heritage is gone.
Yes.
And something that you spoke about earlier was this whole thing of, how the environment, the food that you eat controls you and
Yes.
makes you real. So I've got a friend from Congo. And we were talking about, maybe starting a business there. And she's like, no, as a white guy, you can't go there. You're going to get your head chopped off. I'm like, I'm a white guy, like white people get respected in Africa. And she's like, no, you're going to get chopped up there, especially if you go into gold mining and stuff. So I'm like, interesting. Because I've never had that experience in South Africa.
In South Africa, it's different.
Like in South Africa, if you're foreign and you walk in, you don't look like a complete drug addict or thief, and you treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect right back.
Yes.
Like you got no issues, right? Ubuntu is real, right?
Yes.
And it is still to this. It's beautiful. I love South Africa for that.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, in Congo that doesn't work. Definitely doesn't work. So I said, okay. So then I'm like, because now Congo's going through this whole shift, it's got a lot of mineral resources, doctors walking on the streets, but there's no hospitals.
Yes.
Highly qualified people all over the place, but, no industry to engage in. So everybody's just chasing after the gold because it's quick, easy money.
Yes.
Such a sad story at the end of the day. But then we were talking about, the geopolitics that's getting involved there, and like why certain people are in power in Congo. Because Congo is massive, bro.
Yeah.
Congo is massive. And we were also talking about like foreign countries, like investors like Russia, India, China, America, coming in and doing all their things. And then we got speaking about leadership, and then she said, there's M23 rebels, like she knows them very well, go in the forest, you just got to bring a little bribe along to go up into the mountains, because between the lowlands and the mountains, there's a forest, and that's where the young boys are, the ones who've lost their parents or got kicked out of the house, and they become the rebels. They protect the forest.
Okay.
Yeah, like Peter Pan story.
Yeah.
She idolizes it a bit. But then she goes into saying like the kings and the chiefs in the forest, in the more rural areas, the people fear them. And I'm like, why do they fear them? Do they respect them, or are they afraid of them? And they say the forest listens to them.
Okay.
And I was like, what an interesting concept. Explain that to me. And she says, no, it's like when they speak, the forest does what they say.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, these people, because obviously as a human being, the longer you stay in an environment, the more you engage with the environment, and you eat the fish from the river, and you eat the flowers and the product from the land, and those nutrients, micronutrients that come into you, and your voice kind of morphs into with the relative humidity and the salinity of the pH of the water impacts on your immunity.
Yeah.
The cows might have, there might be certain insects that bite you, that transpose a little bit of bacteria or whatever into you. There's all these different things that are happening. And then over multi-generations, you become part of that environment.
Yes.
Now you start introducing, this GMO food, this one for all, right?
Yes.
In Japan now, apparently, I don't know. I was told the other day by someone very special to me that that is a fake story, fake news story. But apparently they're converting raw sewage into steak,
Hectic.
human waste into steak. And like in South Africa, the new wastewater treatment plants that they're making now, like graves, right? Instead of putting someone in a grave or planting a tree on top of someone, you know, all these traditions which are part of our culture in South Africa, they're going to put human cadavers into high alkaline solution, dissolve it, and flush it back into the water treatment system, and then you're going to open the tap, and that's the water. So you're basically drinking dead people,
Hectic.
but it's going to be clean,
Yeah, yeah.
and there's not going to be any E. coli in there,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So, you know, moving from becoming part of the environment to going into an environment, like if you go to Sandton, right, there is concrete rectangles, angles, and death.
Yes.
Like you got pigeons and rats.
Yes.
In Durban, you got monkeys.
Yeah, you got monkeys, yeah.
Like I was thinking to myself the other day, like, doesn't anybody worried about freaking rabies?
Yeah.
I mean, monkeys carry rabies,
Yeah.
and they didn't like dogs come from the bottom; they come from the top. You know.
Yes. Yes. We had this situation. My girlfriend, at my girlfriend's sister's house, the monkeys came in through the top floor, and then we were sitting outside, and then I just heard one in the kitchen, and then she went up and wanted to go look. I was like, please don't go inside the house. Like, just wait outside, throw things and shout, you know.
Yeah.
The first is that she doesn't have a lot of interaction with monkeys. And I'm just thinking, I know if you go in there and you startle a monkey and it's in a position that's above you and it swats you or something like that, or it bites you, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know? So I was thinking about that. And yeah, we don't actually and they came in recently as well to a new place now, and they bit some of our food and stuff like that. I'm like, chuck all of that away, because these things are like they have their own, you know, genetic
What's their staple
makeup and
diet?
stuff.
What's their staple diet?
I would say berries and fruit. Yeah.
Rubbish.
Really?
We're living in Durban. If those monkeys, if we would be in a rural area, I wouldn't care if a monkey had bitten the fruit.
Because they're
But-
probably eating.
But because we're here in Durban, in a city,
Yeah.
and those monkeys rubble, like they go through the rubbish. That's their main food source.
They've also been
And-
industrialized.
Yeah, and they're much bigger than the monkeys you see in rural areas. Much bigger. And the troops are much bigger as well. But because they are in contact with all these funny stuff that we consume as humans,
Yes.
they are much more dangerous.
Yeah.
Even I've even seen monkeys chase after medicine. You know, you get the medicine with the pills inside, those pill things. They'll look to see if something is still in there. So they are almost like conditioned to look for pharmaceuticals.
Huh.
Like if you look at Pretoria, right? Pretoria, the water is so full of drugs
Yes.
that like they're struggling to clean the water. If you look at there's a game reserve just outside where actually rhino poaching started. I forget the name of the game reserve, just outside of Pretoria East. The eland, the testicles are so swollen from all the chemicals that you feel sorry for these things.
Yeah.
And this is all pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
which we as human beings overutilize. I mean, if you look at the anti-baby pill, right? If you have got a predisposition as a woman for breast cancer in your family, that stuff. So the anti-baby pill, I don't know what you call it in English. Yeah, the anti-baby pill, right?
Yeah, like
You know what I'm talking about.
like a Plan B or something.
No. Plan B is like if you have a whoopsie, that thing you take every day.
Yeah.
That thing.
Oh, okay. I
Minerva
see.
or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That's one of the brands. you know?
Yes.
But like a daily pill that you take not to fall pregnant. Also to help regulate the cycle and stuff like that.
Yes.
That stuff releases the same hormone or something. Like you can check it up on yourself. But that produces the same hormone that then induces breast cancer.
Oh, yes.
And, that's pretty crazy. Because if you look into the ancient people, like if you look at the Khoi and the San and stuff like that, they generally fell pregnant or had a menstrual cycle like maybe like once or twice a year, or even every 4 years, if I remember correctly. And then with because they're hunter gatherers, right? And then people who are living in villages, like there's research done, they have, I think, 320 menstrual cycles in their lifetime, in their productive lifetime. And then in others, like modern day, because of the diet. So basically, one point I'm trying to get to is that the diet is fully conducive to the amount of fertility that you express.
Ooh, yeah.
And then with men, it's the inverse. Like you can, like there's already food out there that can sterilize you.
Mm.
You know, it doesn't just sterilize the animals, but it sterilizes us humans as well. So you can activate human, and inbreeding also causes drop in sperm count. But like the diet that you consume can reduce your sperm count. And then we got this big issue of, you know, infertility and population decline.
Yeah.
Like, we are basically corrupting our bodies to such an extent that we don't or can't have children anymore.
Yeah.
It's quite like we also the last generation, or the first generation, to put it that way, that will die with cancer. It's a guarantee now. And now Trump comes out with his mRNA, who says, if we inject you, then we can sequence your DNA and we can treat your cancer. But what does that do? It makes you like inevitably dependent on the modern system. Yes. Otherwise you die of cancer.
Yeah.
It's also kind of like, where's the human going with all this? You know,
yes.
Like going back to the Congolese king, who has co-evolved with the environment and suited to the environment, and the people respect this man because he is the best, who's best morphed with the land.
Yeah.
Right. He is the one who speaks the echo of the forest.
Yeah. To
now going into Sandton where there's nothing, right? And you know, we're basically living off chemicals. Yes. So the where's the individual in all that?
Yeah.
Because now we're talking about the body, right? The body being corrupted, but the soul's being corrupted.
Yes.
Right? Because of the destruction of the family unit. And it's not just the family unit, it's the whole village has been destroyed.
Yeah.
Right? Even like, who is your first point of contact nowadays? It's your teacher. And your teacher doesn't necessarily care about you for the right reasons or wrong reasons. Because the teacher generally is like totally overstimulated. They've got like, what, 40, 50, 60 kids per class.
Yeah.
They got 3 classes. And the kids come to school, like I was giving an example with that little disabled child earlier.
Yeah.
You don't know how they're being treated at home.
Yes. And
now you expect the child all at school. And some kids, that's the only meal per day.
Yeah.
Like in many, many communities, that's the only meal those children eat all day.
Yeah.
And some of those children never met their parents. They live with a grandmother.
Yes.
That's all they know. And grandmother's got another grandchild now. Because how many people just send their children home?
Yeah. And that, there's another thing is that that makes a child unhappy. It's so my dad passed when I was very young, right? My mom had to work a lot and be away. That environment impacts you deeply. I remember longing for a dad. I remember when my mom had to go and work, and I saw my cousin with her mother present, and you know,
it hurts almost.
It hurts, you know, and it shapes your outlook on life. So I think we tend to, and I'm gonna go back to the pull thing. We tend to sort of forget how big certain moments are in a person's life and how impactful certain things are in a person's life, and they shape their whole outlook. If a teacher goes to school stressed out that day, they might actually shift a learner's interests in a subject or something like that for the rest of the year, for the rest of life, you know? And even now, I'm going to go back to the pull thing. Like, if you take that little pull, it dissolves and goes into your bloodstream in some way, right? A pull is a ginormous thing to an ant. It's very small. We are ginormous to ants, right? This pull will dissolve into something that you can't see, and it's going to go to every single part of your body. The pull doesn't go to your head to cure a headache. It goes everywhere. It affects areas where it's not needed, you know? And who's to say how long that thing lasts in your body? Who's to say what damage
residual effects
does it have on your body, on the parts that it doesn't need, and what other drugs are in there in the drug itself, like that maybe to keep it longer to do whatever.
Yeah, that's the
That
issue with
maybe
vaccines,
go,
right?
yes,
You got the actual active ingredient, and that active ingredient needs to be kept alive, and so they put all this other junk in there,
yes,
like aluminium,
yeah,
like all that kind of stuff, you know. And then you wonder why there's so many people who've got actual cognitive issues. And
yes,
with cognitive issues, I mean things like, I think that's going to come out now with the American new administration, the autism.
yes,
Why do we have so much autism? It's because of all the aluminium in the vaccines.
yeah,
And people go like crazy to the doctor every time. People believe that, you know, the modern medicine, which is very infantile, like very young in its
yes,
science.
actually,
I mean, we are one big experiment house, the whole world, and COVID showed
yes,
it, right? Because no one agreed to that, and such a long story
yeah,
that, but it's all coming out in the main media now. So it was very frustrating for me when it started, because I was like, okay, well, wait, 2014 already they had Event 201, which was the main the plan. Like basically they had the full plan already discussed in a meeting in a setting, and then then they had the Olympics where they kind of presented this whole thing,
yeah,
and then once they had presented this whole thing, they then said, okay, now it's happening.
yeah,
And it's not a wet market, a food market in China. It's actually now this whole theory of, you know, the biolab leak.
yes,
You know, that's the reason this pathogen, which would have never existed in nature. So why in the first place are they experimenting with these, you know, highly volatile and dangerous pathogens
yes,
that someone can steal and then put into the air
and
or
then
the
there's an
water or
outbreak.
something, and you got an outbreak. But then again, what was the full reason for them to do it?
To
Because
do
it
it in the
obviously was
first place.
orchestrated.
I've always wondered, yes,
Yeah, it's like the queues in Germany after the Second World War.
yeah,
If they can get everybody home, because we got this new AI coming out now, you know, the 5G, the 6G, and all that stuff, 7G. You know, do you understand all the different Gs?
no, I think at some point I sort of realized that I don't, and even with the phone bar thing, and I understand that certain,
So
they
7,
just, yeah,
so 7G, there's no more human.
okay,
You understand what a cyborg is?
yes,
So cyborg is an integration between technology, where technology is a species, is a human species that we've created, and it's independent of us by now. So it can replicate itself and amend itself, and now we've given it intelligence to do that. So it's got the physical ability to fix and make itself. Like you don't need a human to build a car anymore.
yeah,
Fully automated. But now the AGI, the AI, but the AGI
yeah,
can now create its own car.
hectic,
So it can design the ultimate best car,
yeah,
which is also ridiculous.
and it has infinite knowledge and it's infinitely learning.
Yeah, but the thing is with the knowledge, because the knowledge is subject to the science that produced the knowledge base.
Okay.
And something that unfortunately has happened a lot with, like, for instance, in natural science, I can speak on that, is like, let's say you got an X and Y graph, right?
Yes.
And then you've got a lot of data points coming along, right? And then all of a sudden you start realizing that if I draw a trend line through this, there's going to be a point up here and a point down here, which don't fit the general trend.
Yeah.
But it's all from, let's say you're measuring the oxygen level in sheep, same species sheep. And you're like, but these guys are outliers. Instead of saying, why are they outliers? You just chuck them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know they're not faulty because you tested them again and again, you got the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's not methodology which is at fault here, right? What do? You just take it out and you say, this is the fact.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what they're trying to do with all humans, is to put us on a straight line.
Yeah. I see.
But now you can't put people on a straight line because everybody is an individual at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So you can't actually, like, what they're trying to do is the near impossible. So what you have to do is you have to switch off the self. So how do they switch off the self? They switch off the self with the tell-a vision, the vision that is told into someone. Like radio was created for propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, the first video calls, when do you think the first video calls existed?
Well, if I just had to answer straight at the top of my head as a person who's not thinking deep, I would just say maybe 2010, 2008.
What happens if
On
I tell you,
on a
like,
mobile phone, hey?
video calls.
Or just in general? Yeah, what's Skype in the 2004s,
Okay.
2003s?
So what happens if I tell you that it happened already in like 1920? Because what happened was that Hitler had to convince the people that the phone, the television back then was, the sound and picture was not together.
Yeah.
So now they couldn't record stuff, so they had to give live broadcasts.
Okay.
So now for the people to believe the news on the television that they were seeing, still black and white back then,
Yeah.
that they would believe that is actual, 8 o'clock news at 8 o'clock, they had to be conditioned to believe that you can put sound and video together at the same time.
Okay.
Like when the first trains were developed, people said, no, they're going to explode into a million pieces because they're going to go faster than 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They created newspapers to entertain, to block the conversation in trains for people talking to each other. But this is more like, there's many stories about many things, but there's certain truths to that as well. But so what they used to do in Germany during the First and Second World War is when the first video call happened, to convince people to listen to the news and trust the news, right, at 8 o'clock, was that they would put the phone booth with a video screen and in real line sight with other people.
Yeah.
So they could see, let's say you and I, you go there, I go here. We can't talk to each other. We can't hear each other because you may be 100 meters away from me. But I'm talking to you on the phone and you hear me and you look at the screen, you see me and I see you on the screen. There's a video camera on you and there's a video camera and you can see each other.
Yeah.
That's video call. So now that we have the smartphone,
that combines those two things
in our hands all the time. I mean, now it's not just the camera that watches you; it's the screen itself that takes pictures of you every time, like the iPhone stuff. Right?
Yes, just keeps flickering like that.
Yeah, it takes a picture of you every time. Why? That's the other thing that no one ever does, especially as young people. We should do much, much more, which will make our lives much easier, is to read the terms and conditions.
Ooh, I was
because if you would read
that.
the terms and conditions, you actually wouldn't accept them.
Yeah.
Because it's ridiculous.
Yes.
Right?
They make them so long as well.
No, but they are supposed to be like long because that's how contentious your life is.
Yeah.
Your life is so important, that so many people have actually been able to sue that all this information is there. So if all this information is there, how safe is it really?
Yeah.
Because if I buy an Apple, how much terms and conditions do you have to sign off?
Yo, plenty. Hey?
No, not an Apple product.
Oh,
the actual Apple. It's funny how you. So you buy the Apple.
Yeah.
The Apple is now there in the shop, right? That for it to be there, the shop guarantees that it is of a certain standard. That means that certain chemicals were not used or certain chemicals were used.
Yes.
That it is of a certain cultivar. That means it's got certain genetics in it. It was grown under certain conditions. Certain labor practices were involved. Certain fertilization protocols were engaged.
Yeah.
And then obviously we buy with the eye, so the apple has to look like something. So it has a certain cold chain that happens. So then the shop, like Checkers, Woolworths, whatever, they employ someone at the farm to every now and again go there, check the product and see how it gets handled to go there. And if they come there, then the farmer loses the contract with that shop.
Oh, I see, yeah.
All right, so there's a protocol that is maintained from farm to shop. And then obviously the apple has to be picked a certain time so it doesn't get overripe in the shop, all that stuff, which then impacts on the nutrients again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then what we eat, coming back to that story now of what we eat, we are what we eat. And what happens now if we eat nothing? Because it's also proven now that the vegetables, which are now so genetically modified, don't contain the same minerals and nutrients
they can't
as what they used to in its original format.
They can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we think now, okay, old wives' tale, mommy used to make us a chicken soup. Like the biggest problem in Africa is cholesterol and hypertension, which leads to strokes and heart attacks. Why? Because we have so much brine, which is a solution in our chicken. Like they tried importing chicken from Brazil where they've got a lower brine content.
Yeah.
The chicken pieces were bigger. You got more protein per kilo. It was cheaper, but the people wouldn't buy it.
Yeah.
So they had to put more brine in there for the people to buy it.
Oh, I see.
But then it became too expensive because the pieces were so big.
Okay. Yeah, if you per kilo and stuff like that, I see. And the fact that they freeze them as well to make them a little bit with the brine that's in there.
The freezing is just to extend the shelf life.
Yeah.
And then the brine is also there to a certain extent because the chloride or whatever, no, it can't be chlorine or chloride. Sodium chloride. I don't know what they put in there. I think it's sodium chloride or bromide. I don't know. Whatever they put in there, it also kind of sterilizes the meat a bit.
Okay.
So it gives it a long shelf life.
Yeah. I see.
But in future, everything's going to be 3D printed anyways.
Oh, that's scary.
If you think of agriculture is just putting a plant there. The plant is the machine to extract the micro and macronutrients from the soil. The final product, the fruit, is the container that holds the macro and macronutrients and the vitamins and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then, like, what you can do is you can take it into the laboratory, you can mill it, and you can extract all those macro and micronutrients. You can package them, you can sell them to Europe, first world countries. And they do the same thing, but what they do is they create it synthetically. And they return one for one, right? They return the synthetic stuff, they put it in here, into the maize mill, let's say, for instance. And then guess what? They call it a staple food source. So now the people, why are they getting so fat? They're getting so fat because the synthetic nutrients in there they've got allergic reactions. Like, why are so many women gluten intolerant?
Yeah.
Like, they get gassy and stuff, Why? Because you can't, put cats in silos. Those big silos where they store the grains and stuff.
Yes.
You can't put cats in there. So they have to put rat poison in there because the rats come. So now the rat poison is a low enough dosage if it is milled, because they can't take the pellets out again. The pellets are there, right? So they kind of have to put as much rat poison to control the rat populations, because every time now and again you bite into a slice of bread, there's going to be a piece of rat in there. You just have to accept that. Like in America now, they just had McDonald's selling human meat. They settled out of court, but it happened, it's proven. So that's the reality, we live in La La Land.
Yeah,
we think bread is bread. No, it's not. Like, there's hardly any wheat in bread. It's cardboard, synthetic.
Wild. And we don't think about these things, even with the terms and conditions thing. I said, what if when you buy a TV, those terms and conditions, you buy a phone, those terms and conditions, you buy a radio, what if
you just bought a whole lot of propaganda making machines?
What if like all of it is all a lie? Like, even the guys in the news, it's all show. Like, really, you signed to say we're gonna play you a show and we're going to. This is all scripted. All those guys aren't real. Like, everything is just fake, know. But because you're buying this TV, you're subscribing to us convincing you on this device that this is all real. And what if it goes that deep? And I think with some things, yes, there is some truth to that. Like, and we as humans just take things at face value. We don't generally try to think about why do we have certain platforms? What is the purpose of it? And with the AI thing as well, I'm like, it's so scary because now we will see real footage, we'll see real footage of situations, of things happening for real, but we will think that they AI generated, and then we're not going to know the difference between reality and fake. And it actually helps people sometimes, because a leader will say something wrong or do something wrong or get caught in a bad action or something, and they will say it's AI generated, and that's how they escape that.
I mean, are you serious? Do you really think that Ramaphosa had all this cash lying around? That's all AI, bro. There is not so much cash in the world like he had. It's unrealistic. It must be AI. I'm winking at him.
Yeah. And then you're gonna doubt reality.
It's possible, yeah.
And maybe we'll see a strange creature or,
aliens,
Yeah, and then we're going to be like, oh, it has to be AI generated. It can't be real. Or like something gruesome will happen to a group of people, by a group of people, and then we'll say, no, it can't be real. It has to be AI generated.
Well, there's something that we can go into is conspiracy and conspiracy theories. The difference, the difference between the two.
A conspiracy is a plan, like a bad plan, like a plot
not
again.
Necessarily bad.
Doesn't have to be bad?
Yeah.
Okay. So a plot, and then the conspiracy theory is, well, it's one that hasn't been what do you call, confirmed, or it's still in the a theory.
Yeah. So the way I understand it is a conspiracy is you and I start a business.
Yes.
And we don't tell anybody about it. It's our conspiracy.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just that the social dynamic around us is not aware of the conspiracy.
Our plan, yeah.
So a conspiracy is not necessarily nefarious.
Okay.
It's not necessarily bad. Whereas a conspiracy theory, on the other hand, is nefarious.
Okay.
It is generally unreal. So there is a conspiracy out there or it might be a conspiracy theory. You see what I did there?
Yes.
That the October 7 attacks in Israel, which were horrendous, which led to all this terrible,
Yeah.
like what
Death
happened in
and
Gaza,
war, yes.
which is a non-United Nations signatory. So actually no one can stand up for them.
Yeah.
And they cannot stand up for themselves because they're not protected by anything.
Yes.
Like they're the independents. You know, they are the country who can make it happen, living outside of the worldwide system,
Yes.
making everything good. Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that they had the ideal life, but they could feed themselves and they could make children and procreate and teach, right?
Yeah.
Living under embargoes by Israel. That doesn't look good for the rest of the world.
Yes.
You know, has got all these different problems
Treaties
like Black
and-
Lives Matter and
and-
stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, like so much politics influencing into issues, which at the end of the day, you know, like racism only exists if you talk about it.
Yeah.
If the rest of the time, unless you have a hatred for a culture of people,
Yeah.
that's racism for sure. But it's a hate of a culture.
Okay.
But if you like approach someone, you say like based on their skin color that you don't like them, it's maybe, I don't think there is anybody like that out there. I think most people just dislike the other person.
Yeah.
There's very few people who dislike someone for being, you know, Asian, for being African, for being European, you know, for being Native American, to being anything.
Yeah.
That hatred comes from an insecurity expressed from within outwards.
Okay.
You know, like that lady that got caught on social media or whatever with that that big thing that happened in Pretoria, I think it was. And she was shouting at the petrol attendant and then she went to jail and whatever.
Oh, I see.
That woman needs help, right? Jail is not sufficient there.
Yeah.
That woman needs real help. Now we're coming back to the schools.
Yes.
You know, why is there no help in schools? Well, first of all, like, how do you learn? You learn through trauma. Yeah, and then this is my point of view. You get positive and you get negative trauma.
Yes.
And a positive trauma is like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And a negative trauma is like, you know, please stop hitting me. Or, you know, sitting in front of a book in a very uncomfortable chair for hours on end, trying to cram something into your head. That's not very healthy and conducive for, you know, stimulating and excitement. And children, we are stimulated by excitement.
Yes.
You know, we should be excited about the things we're learning, but we're not.
No.
So that the trauma comes in again. So you're talking about televisions right now and cell phones and radios and stuff like that in terms of conditions that are associated with that. What happens if you have to get a TV license for your cell phone? You know, are you still going to watch cell phone? Because you don't watch TV anymore, you watch cell phone, right?
Yes.
So are you still going to watch cell phone? And why do they need, and then if you have a cell phone which needs a TV license, you also need a radio license. And what are you actually paying for at the end of the day if you get a license for your TV or for your radio? Because your TV and radio are purely instruments of propaganda dissemination.
Yeah.
So why is it so interesting to everybody? Why is it so important to everybody? What is wrong with our culture that we constantly need to be affirmed by each other to say, look how big my propaganda machine is in my house.
Yeah.
Look how much sound my propaganda machine can make.
Yeah.
You know, and then going back to what you said about the fourth industrial revolution on the AI.
Yes.
Is that how do we decide for ourselves anything anymore if it's decided for us? Because what happens if the decision that you want to make is inherently wrong?
Yeah.
Because you don't have all the information, you don't have all the facts.
Yes.
And then you were talking about the topic that you were talking about was fear.
Yeah.
How do you go and engage in a world if you are fearful of everything, if you cannot trust what you think and what you feel, you know, that spirit.
That's your intuition.
And then you need substances to motivate yourself, the placebo effect,
Yes.
to say, now I can do it. Now I can make it happen.
Yeah. And it's scary that because on top of daily stresses, it sort of takes a backseat, but it's probably the most important thing, that awareness of what's going on around you. And to just understand certain truths. I think about this with convenience, a convenience shop like a Shell, or you know, like you could be driving and you'll stop at a Shell and buy like a bag of chips, you know, but Checkers could be like a further 5 minutes away, you know, and it will be obviously much cheaper. But there's a group of people that will never set foot in a convenience shop generally because of their financial situation, they will always go to the supermarket and get the best deal, right? They are not the market at all. And the industries are well aware of that. But they advertise convenience to certain people, and we just willingly go with that flow. And it's so weird how you can manipulate a human being into
But
doing
what
something.
is convenience then? Convenience is the enforcement of laziness and the instant gratification. So something that we as society have completely lost is to withhold. I think every single spiritual practice in the world talks about long suffering and blessings. What is a blessing? A blessing is something that you're given and that you don't necessarily have to consume all at once. You get a piece of chocolate, you're blessed with the chocolate. It doesn't mean that you have to eat the whole slab. And maybe you don't even have to open it right now. Maybe you wait for that special moment for it to open.
Yeah.
But we are so sugar hungry right now that we're going to chow the whole sugar. We're not going to eat the chocolate, we're going to eat the sugar.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, nowadays they got new Cadbury's out. They made them smaller packaging, same price, but apparently it tastes like bleach. This is what I saw on social media today. To me, I don't buy chocolate, but from childhood, I have good memories, fond memories of Cadbury. But now I see that, if it's real or not, doesn't matter. The point is, that means they took the sugar out. I don't want to eat the chocolate anymore. Because now it tastes different.
And apparently chocolate wasn't really sweet, eh?
Do you know what they make chocolate, like this cheap chocolate from?
No.
Pig's blood.
Oh.
Interesting, huh? Pretty cool. Well, at least in the olden days, they used to make it from pig's blood. Yeah.
And I was watching this on social media at this point, and this guy obviously grew up in a wealthy family, and he was just saying, he looks like a rapper, like a black rapper. So like what he was saying was quite strange to hear, but I imagine that he was raised by a family of wealth in sorts, and he grew up in money. And he's just saying, I've never had McDonald's. That's never happened to me.
Yeah, good. What a lucky guy.
I remember just going, he said that so casually, and he means it, Yeah. And there's a certain class of people that don't engage with certain products because they understand full well what kind of garbage is in that stuff, And what we often don't understand about companies is that they try to do the bare minimum. Like if there's rules rules or like there's another word for it. Yeah, like for
minimum requirements, standards.
Yes, standards. Yeah. If there's standards for how you can make food, and the legislation is long, and if you have lawyers of a firm of 50 that you pay monthly to look and find loopholes to do business practices badly, the fact that you were saying some silos will put rat poisoning in there,
all of them do.
That there's a legislation in government that sort of allows a certain amount, right? The fact that that's even a thing is like so disconcerting. But what if some of these companies are doing the bare minimum and making us such terrible food? And then there are obviously high quality food places, right? But generally finance will be the reason that people engage with certain things. But full well, like that there's certain food that you won't eat, because it's bad. But there's certain people in a certain class that will eat that sort of food. But we sort of stop somewhere and we think, oh no, this should be fine because it's worldwide. No, it's not. It goes all the way. You can eat premium food and stay there. Even if you're anywhere in the world, you'll think Coke or Sprite or something like that is the only beverage if that's what you're surrounded by. But if you understand that that's not actually good, what's actually really good is for me to have a bottle of spring water. And when I say spring water, I mean buy it from a genuine company that gets actual spring water. You can find that, or you could I don't know, go source it yourself or something like that. But that has better nutritional content than a Coke. But we're so used to seeing ads with a Coke on a dinner table, or like, that we think this is a normal thing. But no, in actuality, those are companies that signed on a piece of paper that they could get away with certain business
Like
practices.
product placement in movies.
Yes, and it's bad food, but it's like the bare minimum bad, no?
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's just about legal.
yeah, it's as legal as it can get, and then we source it out
Yeah,
to the
but
people.
this whole concept of just about legal. I'm just about legal to drink, so it's fine if I'm not legal yet, but I can start practicing now already. I mean, that's flaunted throughout our society,
Yeah,
and it's this always, we're so restricted in everything that we do and have. Everything is so regulated. If we just are tricked to believe that we have a little bit of an escape here, a little bit of an escape there, it's fine. It's cool.
yeah,
It's our little escape, our little excuse.
Hmm.
Like honey, I just took a little bit of money from the cashier. She was looking away, and I just took a little bit of cash. Like I remember going to galas in school, and then they always used to have these tuck shops. And one of my friends dared me, like, well, I probably dared myself, and I was like, "Check, I'm going to do this." And I stole like a tempo or something, like a chocolate bar, right, with a coconut inside.
yes,
I don't know. I thought like awesome, and turned around, I felt so bad, and I went like, no. You know what a mission is? To return something like that you stole without being seen that you're returning it.
yeah.
And I put it back, and she's like, "What? You don't want it?" And I was like, "No, I stole it." She looks at me, she's like, "What?" Completely confused. Why would you steal it and then return it?
Return it.
Because I didn't like the feeling. But yeah, I lost the train of thought there. But it's just that's what it was. We're so restricted in this world that we live in, and there's so much pressure. Because like if you look at the olden days, people used to work late into the night.
Yes.
They didn't have TV, television, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to read. Yeah. Okay, they procreated probably more, but they didn't have more children than what we have now. There was some self-restraint and all of that.
Yes.
And it's a big lesson for young people to know is like the more self-restraint you show, the more enjoyable love can be. You don't have to have everything instantaneously now and forever.
Yes.
Right? And if you go on a date, why do you sit in front of a TV or go and sit opposite each other on the phone, texting each other? What's the point of being together? There's such a disconnection from what the world used to be to what it is today. So the point I'm trying to make is we used to be so busy holding ourselves busy, activating ourselves, right? It's not just the nutrition we eat, it's also how we move our bodies.
Yes.
How much time do we actually spend activating our machine that is our body every single day to warm it up and cool it down at the end of the day?
That's very important.
And remember, stress is what we make. There is no stress. You can't go and buy stress.
No.
You make stress.
Yes.
Because you are not able to deal with a certain situation. And everybody's stressed out. Everybody. Why? Because there is no themselves. There is no more identity.
Yes.
They're all living through personality. It's this personality, it's this personality, it's a bit of this personality, a bit of this, Everybody just gets a bit of personality from everything else. And then that becomes their identity. But there's no I in their identity.
Yeah, but it's so interesting. I think we've covered quite a few things. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in the world that people aren't aware of, or just don't care to investigate further about.
It's also not put into their space to know about.
Yes, and that's in a way trickery, actually. But it's not unlawful to make the T's and C's small. They're there as long as they're there, and we don't ask ourselves why they're small. We don't ask ourselves, you only find out when you're in a circumstance. Like I had a car crash. I tried to claim with insurance, and they said, yeah, if we didn't come to evaluate the car at the start, we're going to take 20% thingy. We're going to take off 20% there. I'm like, but that wasn't properly explained to me. Of course, I would have invited you to come look at the car and assess the car before, but they must have said that so quickly, or like covered it in an email that they sent to spam. And I'm like, now I'm in a situation when I need to claim. There's just so many things that if you understand legislation and the rules of engagement really well, you can get away with so much and you can put yourself at the front. And unfortunately, big corporates tend to do that. And we follow suit because we see that as being the norm, but it's actually not. And yeah, we are in serious trouble unless we start educating ourselves about what we are surrounded by, and get in the action. And that's what I was saying with curriculum and schools and counselors. We need that stuff. You can't just slap the same patch on every problem. Some things need a bandage, some things need a plaster, some things need surgery. The circumstances that we have need different things, but we're just slapping one basic way of educating. That can't be.
So I'm a wetland specialist, right?
Yeah.
By trade. So one good way of me trying to explain to people what a wetland is. A wetland is an area in the topography and the geomorphology of the landscape which accumulates water.
Yes.
And that water sits in the soil to create anaerobic conditions for certain chemical reactions to happen which degrade the soil particles to a certain degree, and it creates a unique environment, a wet environment.
Yes.
And every wetland has got certain input and output characteristics. Yeah, you get wetlands that happen on slopes. You get wetlands that happen in pans. You get wetlands that have valley bottoms. That they've got flow. So there's in and outflow of all of those. Yeah, but all the water comes from the rain, and then from the rain it goes into the soil, and then from the soil it gets conducted inside the soil laterally down the hill slope into this place where it then accumulates because there's maybe a bit of a rock there or something, or it's flatter or something, but that becomes a wetland. And that wetland is unique because every wetland is different.
Yeah.
And every wetland receives the ID in South Africa. And so like something that in my industry that I disagree with is just by calling it that, it is that. By calling something a man or a woman or a child or a fifth grader or a boy in a fifth grade class, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Just like every human being is unique and super
Complex.
brilliant and complex and amazing and deserves to be individually engaged, every wetland is, it's got its own input parameters and own output parameters.
Yeah.
And it's very important in its own space, but relative to other wetlands, it will have different characteristics and be of less or more of importance.
Yeah.
But a wetland is a living ecosystem, which is surrounded by its environment. It's environment that feeds it.
Yes.
So it's like a collection of stuff that puts it all together,
Yes.
and then the wetland is the net result thereof. And the same with us humans, But with many of us, we're thrown into the same environment, and then we expected to have the same product. But we don't.
It's just.
So a question I've got for you is, what happens if all these T's and C's and all these responsibilities that you are absorbing, which are insurmountable compared to 20 years ago, like insurance stuff and staying on top of, checking your spam accounts, and like, if a world order would be instilled where all this would be taken care for you and all you had to concentrate is on your gift, let's say they could discover your gift, would you say yes? If someone would come to you and say, this is the job that's going to make you happy, are you going to say yes? But then obviously you don't have to take all those responsibilities as well.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't, just knowing myself, but I can see how it could be compelling, It looks like.
How many people do you think, if a room full of 100 average people, how many people would say yes, your age?
Probably 80%. And we probably already doing some level of that, some degree of that.
And where do you think it's going to take our world if everybody is just going to engage in that kind of a world?
Well, it's going to lead to one thinking, one order, really.
A whole lot of nothing at the end of the day, huh? Because what's the next frontier? I always wanted to become an explorer. Then when I hit varsity, I was like, there's no more place to explore. We've been everywhere multiple times already, over the years, over the ages, over the epochs.
Yeah.
What's our next frontier in this day and age?
Oh, someone would say space.
Yeah. So how are we going to go to space?
Elon.
No. He's financed by the military-industrial complex. Okay, but it's his dream. Well done for him.
Yes.
But remember, there's also families behind families.
Yes.
I'm not saying that he's stupid, but he's brilliant, probably.
Yeah.
I never met the guy. I can't say. But he's got vision, I guess. And for some reason, his vision is being promoted.
And sorry to cut you, but isn't it interesting that you engage with so much information about Elon on social media, especially for the type of person that he is? It does feel a little bit like being pushed, being pushed as a narrative, because like take a world leader, for instance, like a Congolese government leader. I don't interact with a lot of information about that, or Chinese, and there are other people that invent certain things that are pretty cool. But there's this common theme. I know that my algorithm is probably, but there's a common theme. Like, you'll get the Andrew Tates and and the Candace Owens. There's just like a bit of a theme with the type of people that you find that you're interacting with their content, and even if it might be on.
So how long do you scroll?
Me, quite a bit.
Okay, so why do you scroll? I mean, there's a search bar on top, right? I'm going to talk like my grandfather.
Yeah.
Why do you put butter on your bread and then you put jam on top and then you eat it? Why don't you just eat the bread, eat the butter, eat the jam? It all ends up in the same stomach.
That's true.
So if you got a YouTube with a search bar, what's your intention of accessing that app in the first place? Is it to scroll? Because if it is to scroll, you really are practicing addictive behavior. It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
You are not complete within yourself. That's why you're scrolling. Because you should be sentient. You should be, self-actualized. You should at every moment of every day be able to do stuff that you want to. From the morning till you fall asleep, you've got purpose. You're God's chosen child. You're on this earth. You deserve to live. You are free. You are fortunate to have everything. You're grateful. Then why on earth do you subject yourself to something like as simple as scrolling? And then you're complaining that you're being given certain content. You shouldn't even be concerned about your content, because all you should be concerned about is your mind having the ability to give input to questions you've got.
Yes.
And those questions, as soon as they're answered, you drop and you actually do something with your life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Elon is so successful, because he never scrolled.
Yes, that's true. I'm with that 100%. Thank you so much. I'm sure we will do this again. I'm very intrigued by how you see things and how you think about things, and it's this. I always say it's the only way you engage with knowledge is using some kind of knowledge as well. And the more knowledge you have, the more you engage with more knowledge. And it's always cool to pass ideas around and learn. And I've learned a great deal today. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was an awesome experience. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Cool.